In 1908, while present in a car racing event, a little boy swore to his father that one day he will become the world's first car racing driver. A 10-year-old boy who suffered from a medical condition, claustrophobia. No one believed this boy will open a car company in the coming days, which will take the automobiles industry to the next level. And that boy, Enzo Ferrari, becomes one of the wealthiest men in the Italian history. On the day February 18, 1898, Modena, Italy, during heavy snowstorm, a metal worker and his wife welcomed their second son to the world. The boy was given the name Enzo Ferrari. Few years later, Enzo went to the school, where he was an average student and barely mixed with other students. Enzo Ferrari suffered from claustrophobia. Having this medical condition, he mostly avoided playing with children and stay alone. At the age of 10, 1908, Enzo was bitten by the racing bug. When Enzo's father took him to watch a motor car race in Bologna, where he witnessed Felice Nazzaro's win, that was the moment he swore to his dad that one day he will be a racing driver. After back from the racing event, he started to help his father in their metal business. But the deaths of his father and brother from the flu in 1916 forced him to grow up quickly. He left the school and unfortunately ended up with a little formal education. Now, he started to work as an instructor for Modena's fire service workshop. After some months, he left the job in the hope to serve in Italian army. And luckily, in 1917, during the World War I, Enzo Ferrari joined the Italian army and shoed mules for the 3rd Alpine Artillery Division. After became severely sick himself in the 1918 flu pandemic, he was given an honorable discharge from Italian service. Enzo Ferrari started searching for a job in the car industry. He unsuccessfully volunteered his services to Fiat in Turin, eventually settling for a job as test driver for Costruzioni Meccaniche Nazionale, in short CMN, a small car manufacturer in Milan, which rebuilt used truck bodies into small passenger cars. Watching his passion, they promoted Enzo to race car driver, and in 1919, his daydreams become true. He made his competitive debut in the Parma Poggio di Berceto hill climb race, where he finished 4th in the 3-liter category. Now the fortune started to favor Enzo. On the 23rd of November of the same year, he took part in the Targa Florio, but had to retire after his car's fuel tank developed a leak. Due to the large number of retirements, he finished 9th. And some months later, in 1920, Ferrari joined the racing department of Alfa Romeo as a driver. And in 1923, he won his first Grand Prix in Ravenna on the Savio circuit. And in the same year, he met the love of his life, Laura Dominica, an Italian lady. After their marriage, 1924 was his best season for Enzo Ferrari, with 3 wins, including Ravenna, Polesine, and the Coppa Acerbo in Pescara. Deeply shocked by the death of Ugo Civicsi in 1923 and Antonio Ascari in 1925, Ferrari, by his own admission, continued to race half-heartedly. At the same time, he developed a taste for the organizational aspects of Grand Prix racing. Following the birth of his son Dino in 1932, Ferrari decided to retire and to focus instead on the management and development of the factory Alfa race cars, eventually building up a race team of superstar drivers, including Giuseppe Campari and Tazio Nuvolari. Ferrari retired from competitive driving, having participated in 41 Grands Prix with a record of 11 wins. In 1933, Alfa Romeo agreed to partner Ferrari's racing team when financial constraints forced them to withdraw their support, a decision subsequently retracted, thanks to the intervention of Pirelli. Despite the quality of the Scuderia drivers, the team struggled to compete with Auto Union and Mercedes. Although the German manufacturers dominated the era, Ferrari's team achieved a notable victory in 1935, when Tazio Nuvolari beat Rudolf Caracciola and Bernd Rosemeyer on their home turf at the German Grand Prix. In 1937, the company Scuderia Ferrari was dissolved, and Ferrari returned to Alfa's racing team, named Alfa Corse. Alfa Romeo decided to regain full control of its racing division, retaining Ferrari as sporting director. After a disagreement with Alfa's managing director Ugo Cabato, Ferrari left Alfa Romeo in 1939 and founded a company named Auto Avio Costruzioni, a company which supplied parts to other racing teams. Now the Ferrari was ready to start the car production, but he had an agreement with his former employer Alfa Romeo to not put his name on a car for 5 years. During these years, he built a car named Aveo 815 without putting his name to it. This car did not got any attention. With the outbreak of World War II, Ferrari's factory was forced to undertake war production for Mussolini's fascist government. Then everything was stopped by the war. In 1944 and 1945, the factory was bombed 3 times. Enzo and his workers survived, and Ferrari factory was relocated from Modena to Maranello. At the end of the war, he decided to start making cars bearing his name. As soon as the peace was installed, they started to work on a new car. In 1947, the world was struggling to recover and most car makers started to work on economic models. But the desire for sports cars didn't stop Enzo. He used his experience in motor racing and in the production of the Aveo 815, which he built recently. Enzo believed that an engine is the heart of a car. Therefore, in building his first car, he worked very hard on the engine after a long hardship. Finally, in 1947, he removed the cloth and there comes the first Ferrari car, with the name tag 125S having Ferrari's own emblem. The emblem had been created and sported by Italian fighter plane pilot Francesco Baracca. During World War I, Baracca's mother gave Ferrari a necklace with the prancing horse on it prior to takeoff. Baracca was shot down and killed by an Austrian airplane. In memory of his death, Enzo used the prancing horse to create the emblem. That would become the world-famous Ferrari shield, initially displayed on Alfa Romeos. The shield then started showing up on the Ferrari. The car featured the same wheelbases as the Aveo Costrazione, but with an independent front suspension. In the rear, there was a live axle with semi-elliptic springs, dampers and anti-roll bar. Under the hood, the engine had the same 1.5-liter displacement as the Aveo 815, but it was completely new. It was a V12 unit, boasted almost 80 horsepower without the aid of any turbocharger. That was a very high value for those times. He could only build 2 cars, a 125 and a 125S. After the car being made, Enzo decided to battle the dominating Alfa Romeos with his own manufactured car and with his own team. The team's open-wheel debut took place in Turin in 1948. And the first win came later in the year in Lago di Garda. The first major victory came at the 1949 to 24 Hours of Le Mans, with a Ferrari 166mm driven. As the time went by, Ferrari cars were getting more attention. Ferrari won his first World Championship Grand Prix at Silverstone in 1951. Apocryphally, Enzo cried like a baby when his team finally defeated the mighty Alfetta 159. And Ferrari cars continued their winning in different championships in order to finance his racing endeavors in Formula One, as well as in other events. The company started selling sports cars. The first Ferrari produced for the consumer market came in 1958 with the Ferrari 250 GT, a V12-powered Grand Tourer. Eventually, Fiat purchased a 50% stake in Ferrari, the immediate outcome of which was the increase in the amount of investment capital that was available, and right away construction on a factory expansion. To move production of the Ferrari-powered Fiat Dino from Fiat's Turin plant began. Investment in new models at the top of the Ferrari range also increased. Fiat's involvement was necessary for new models to roll off the factory profits. Making success followed with the likes of the S308 GTB GTS, followed closely by the 328 and the 365 Daytona, a remarkable feat considering the fact that they rolled into sales in the 1970s. A time of oil shortage. The legend of the Ferrari V12 and V8 engines started from this period owing to high performance and the sense of speed it provided drivers of those Ferraris. However, they were still seen as a middling Italian car brand, and the rich young executives still wanted Aston Martins, Jaguars and Lamborghinis. Ferrari stormed onto the scene and solidified themselves as a sheer brand with the Ferrari Testarossa in 1984. Its sleek fighter jet-inspired design, alongside a powerful V12 engine, won everyone's hearts, and it became the best-selling Ferrari of the 20th century, until the even more outrageous F40 came out. After its inclusion in the popular Miami Vice TV show, starring Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas, those same young executives wanted a Ferrari Testarossa the most, and Ferrari's brand image blew up overnight. By this time, Enzo Ferrari's health was slowly failing. While he still spoke to interviewers and generally gave directions to the company, it was soon going to be time for him to go. The last car he had the honor of overseeing was the aforementioned F40, the first car in history to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier. At the age of 90, Ferrari passed away in Maranello on August 14, 1988. After Ferrari's gone, The 90s continued to see excellent Ferrari driving machines such as the Ferrari F50, the 355 and the 575. Ferrari introduced and called its fastest model at the time the Enzo, after of course the company's founder Enzo Ferrari. And today's Ferrari cars are a real symbol of super hardcore efforts which were inducted in building this billion-dollar company. And despite all the up and downs, Enzo Ferrari made it possible. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, comment and like the video. We will see you in the next awesome video.